Walt Gollender, and I'm currently a talent manager, television producer, cable personality, if you will, songwriter, consultant to a lot of people who come to me for help, and I have an enormous Rolodex, and I've done a great deal of linking people up who needed to be linked up and bringing people together, sort of a musical midwife, as I've said. And it all started back around 1947 when I started to listen to music on the radio. And the first song that I was in love with was the late Frankie Laine's That's My Desire. And I started to sing it in our candy store in Nutley, New Jersey. I then was engrossed by Phil Harris's version of The Thing. And then listening to the radio, I heard the Four Aces, the top vocal group at the time. And they became my be-all and end-all, and that got me totally involved in show business. Having heard their first records on the radio in 1951, which was It's No Sin, in the summer of 1951, I was totally obsessed with Al Albert's voice and the harmony and the gutsiness of their singing. And I began to watch them on all the early variety shows. And at that point, I was just mesmerized and musically addicted, because the Four Aces were the only group at that time who were doing hand movements, choreography, moving hands, throwing their hands out, hands in the air, and the voice, the harmony, the biting and cutting of the lyrics just made me want to be an ace. And I would stand in front of a mirror in our apartment in Nutley, and I would emulate what the Aces were doing. So their choreography just mesmerized me, and I said, I've got to see these fellas. And the first time I did was in the summer of 1953, when my cousin Marty and I went to the Paramount Theater. Yeah, people use that cliche, the Paramount, but that was the biggie at the time, because there you could see 5 shows a day. People don't realize you saw 5 shows a day and a B movie in between. And then as the crowds came in, they cut out the B movie and they just had show, intermission, clear the theater, and show again. So we could stay all day long for $2.50 and watch my favorite group. I went backstage and I met Al Alberts in that particular situation, and I looked at him and he didn't know who I was, but that got me to know them more at nightclubs, and I went to their recording sessions, which nobody else was allowed to go to, except Herb Kessler, their manager, who became my mentor. I wanted to be like Herb Kessler and have my own act someday. So I would sit there with him at the Decca Studios on 72nd Street and watch the Aces actually recording monaural, huge orchestra, no overdubbing, just talent one time through. So I wanted to be like Herb Kessler, and I said to myself in 1963, here I am, a guidance counselor at East Orange High School, and I'm going to find myself a singer that I can manage, promote, spend a lot of money on, and be a part of. And one day I was up at a talent agency at 23 Broad Street in Bloomfield, and there was a young black singer up there named Jimmy Miller, and he was hanging around with Bill and Bert trying to get a job in music, and I was up there plugging songs because I had started to write songs in 1963. I wanted to be, you know, the poor man's Don Kirshner, if you will. And Jimmy Miller said to me, are you going down toward East Orange? I need a ride home. And I said, yeah, sure. So he got in my Rambler, my 62 Rambler, and I drove him down Bloomfield Avenue. And I remember as we were coming down by the Parkway overpass, I said, Jimmy, you have a nice speaking voice. Sing me a song. And we were just passing Hoffman Chevrolet, believe it or not, because I remember things specifically. And he sang, she wore blue velvets. I said, wow, that's just like the Bobby Vinton record. You've got quite a voice. And I said to myself, this will be my vehicle. This will be my entree into the business. This is it. And so we fast forward. I took him out for tuxedos in East Orange. I took him for photographs at Lorston Studio, and I posed and set up all the photos. I had his hand on his chin, the usual theatrical shots, which I was very familiar with. Arms folded, coat over the shoulder, the Sinatra pose, as I call it. And I invested a lot of my guidance counselor money. I was making $6,500 at that time, but it was good enough for a single person. And I then costumed him, as it was, took pictures, began sending out resumes, and I said, it's time to do a recording. It's 1963 and a half, but I should get a contract on this fellow so I don't go off half-cocked. And I presented a 2-page Passantino contract to him, and he signed it at the then Willie's Diner. We sat there and he signed a simple 2-page theatrical management contract for 3 years with a 2-year option. And he was not more than 18 years of age, and his father did co-sign the contract for management. Then, as it came time to make a recording, I said, let's cut a couple of tunes. I had written a cha-cha song called Jeannie, which I dreamed might go to Frankie Avalon, but I never had a demonstration record, a demo, as we say, a lacquer. I did have sheet music, but I never had recorded it, and I said, Jimmy, do you like this song? It's a cha-cha. It's a Frankie Avalon type song. He says, I love it. The melody is good. I do write lyrics and melody whenever I do work. I'm able to do that. I get a concept for the lyric, and then, of course, I get a melody in my head, and I think I have a very good head for a melody, as Erwin Levine and other promoters have said to me. You've got good ears. And I put together $600 and some, and we went down to Hertz Recording Studio on Halsey Street in Newark, and we recorded Jeannie with girl singers in the background, all paid for by myself, $15 a person. I had a band called the Page Four, and they did the recording of 2 sides. And the flip side, I did a favor for a policeman in Bloomfield named Ralph Parla, and I put his song Special Occasion on the B-side to placate Ralph, who was a nice guy, and I needed a throwaway B-side, which was Special Occasion. But Jeannie was the A-side, words and music by me. I then shopped it around New York. I had a number of acetates made up at $4 a piece in those days, you know, a one-sided acetate, like a little black record, which people don't even know about today. And I went door to door, 1619 Broadway, 1650 Broadway, up to the record companies on 57th Street in Midtown, playing it on the old phonographs, if anybody knows where they are, with the little tone arm and the little needle. And one man said to me one day, even though he sounds a lot like Lenny Welsh, and he sounds like Adam Wade, and he sounds like Johnny Mathis, I like him enough. I think I can help you. That man was George Levy. George Levy was a very prominent, well-ensconced attorney in New York, and he was the brother of Lou Levy, who had started Leeds Music. They changed the name from Levy to Leeds, as you can imagine why. And Lou Levy was a major lawyer in New York for Chess Records, Marshall Chess at Chess Records. He was a heavy hitter connection man, and he heard the record, and he went to the phone in that office that day, and he called Gunter Hauer and Harold Lipsius down at Jamie Guyton Records at 919 North Broad Street in Philadelphia, and he said to Gunter Hauer or Harold Lipsius, hi folks, this is George. I have a talent scout manager here, and he's got a very, very commercial sounding recording of Jeannie, the Magic Lamp, not the name of an individual, but Genie. It's a beautiful song, it's a cha-cha. He's got a master here. I'm going to give him directions, take the master tapes, which was a 4-track at that time, 4-track mono, reel-to-reel. Take it down, meet with him, we'll set up an appointment, and I think you're going to find out that we've got something here. And it got better after that. Naturally, I was thrilled because here I was in 1964 with a song that I had written, music and lyrics, which I could not get to Frankie Avalon because I didn't have a demo. So now when George Levy, who at one time had managed the Andrews Sisters, no less, and whose brother was a major player forming Leeds Music, which was an offshoot of Universal Music and MCA Music, these were powerhouse heavyweights. I never went to unknowns unless they had a track record. I'm not going to waste my time with somebody unless I like them and they're viable. So I took a train from Newark Penn Station. I went down to Philadelphia to the Pennsylvania Station at 30th Street, and I took a cab. No, I took a bus down to 919 North Broad Street and went into the offices behind the warehouse. And I met with Gunter Hauer and Harold Lipsius, and I played the record there. And they said, hey, We like this. George Levy has a good ear. You've got a great master here. And they proceeded, as I must admit, and I was very naive, they proceeded to sign the tape away from me, the 4-track large cardboard box with this beautiful 4-track recording. And they said, sign here, we will publish the songs. Of course, I was just thrilled. I was never thinking at that time, even though I knew the whole Four Aces story of the business, here I am in an office with two powerful people saying, sign here, we will own the master, and we will be the publishers. Now, of course, later in life, I would say, I want a piece of the publishing, but you don't do that with a fledgling project. You have to crawl before you walk. But I signed over the master recording. That's all I could think about, getting my song out in the marketplace by a great black singer, and I was the writer of lyrics and melody, and I was thrilled to death. So I signed away the 4-track tape. I left it there on the desk at Jamie Guyden Records, which was one of the top R&B soul labels at the time in 1964. Think where we are now, 1964. The record was pressed up at the pressing plant, wherever they happened to press them, and they sent me some DJ copies, sample copies, not for sale DJ copies, and I was thrilled to death. And then I said, Jimmy, look, we've got records. You've got 50 records here. Let's put them on some of the local jukeboxes, which we always did in those days. We would order jukebox title strips from Peerless Title Strip Company, Genie/Special Occasion. It was a thrill, and we'd give the nightclub owner or the tavern owner the little strip to put in the jukebox, and there's the record spinning. But that doesn't make any noise. It's just a record on a jukebox. I don't get those 10-cent pieces. So I said, will it get on the radio? So I took some copies over to WNJR at the time, which was on Union Avenue, over in Union. It's now a storage warehouse now, and I said, well, let's hope that we can get some more action here. And the song became a pick of the week on Apex Martin's distributor sheet. Now, Apex/Martin was a major powerhouse distributor in the Newark area. There were 4 of them. They took the record on to be the distributor of name for that record. So the record came out on their pick sheet, songs to watch, songs to pick, up and coming, and it was listed. And I said, Jimmy Miller, let's stop at Willie's Diner and let's share a piece of cheesecake, if you will. And then the end came. And this is the sad part. It's been the story of my life. As our record was being picked and starting to show action, and lots of other records were starting to happen, suddenly there came the British invasion. And everything, as you all know, suddenly was stifled. And what had been an up-and-coming pick of the week, now we have the Beatles and Jerry and the Pacemakers and the Animals and the Dave Clark Five. Oh, it hurts to talk about this because it was the end of the end. Flooding the radio, flooding the marketplace with the British invasion, with the Beatles, the Mop Tops, and we died right there. So I licked my wounds and I said, we've lost our first recording, which is a damn shame, but the Beatles were overriding the airwaves. So in 1965, I said, we've got to keep going. I'll put up about $800 again from my guidance counselor money, and I had money to throw around at that time, and $800, not too bad. And I went to some publishers in New York, as I was wont to do, and I searched through all of the material that was available. I went to the top line publishers, and with my golden ears, quote unquote, I selected 8 songs that could be viable, and I located Norbert de Coteau. Now you're wondering who Bert de Coteau is, the short name. I needed an arranger and a producer because I had a bunch of songs and I was going to sit down with Jimmy Miller, with myself, and an arranger at his home in East Orange. So I asked around the Brill Building and I asked around 1650 Broadway, who's around, who's an arranger who'll work cheap and who's got talent? And the word came back to me from the drugstore on Broadway down by the old Hawaii Kai. There's a fella here, he just came out of the Army. He's quite a good music fella. He plays great piano, and he was a piano player for Adam Wade. I said, oh, Adam Wade, no slouch. And you can find Bertie Coteau. He's hanging around the Allegro Studios, which was downstairs at 1650 Broadway. And I went over, and I met Mr. D. Coteau, and he said, I have to eat now. I don't want to talk in the studio. Let's go up to the snack shop. I want to get an egg salad sandwich. And I said, We came upstairs, and we went to the luncheonette. It was a combination luncheonette drugstore. And he's munching on an egg salad sandwich, and I'm standing there saying, I'm Walt Gollender, and I'd like to hire you to be an arranger of 3 songs from my artist, Jimmy Miller. He says, okay. And he had nothing to lose. He's out of the Army, and playing piano for Adam Wade is not enough for a guy who wants to be an arranger and a producer. And I said, will you come to New Jersey? He says, I don't drive. Being in New York, I don't have to have a car, but can you pick me up on the night that we decide? And I said, yeah, where can I pick you up? He said, I'll be up by the George Washington Bridge up toward 9W there. And I said, oh. I said, all right. So we agreed on a certain night. I drove up in my Rambler, my still faithful 62 Rambler, and I picked up Bertie Coteau, who always had a toothpick in his mouth, and I drove him from the George Washington Bridge area all the way down the turnpike, and we arrived at Jimmy Miller's house. Introductions were made. We sat down on the floor, some of us, and I laid out 8 great songs that I had picked out, and they were on lacquers, as I say, Publishers Demonstration Records. And between the 3 of us, the one song that I loved, called Break My Heart Break, that was a winner right away. In fact, the fellow who sang the demo, Kenny Chandler, could have had a hit with it had it had promotion. That was a smash right there. So there's a no-brainer there. Then I picked out a couple of high-voice songs, and the next song was I Am, Therefore I Love. And it was a big ballad with a crashing kind of a ending, which Jimmy could handle. And then I took another song. Again, the demo was could have been a hit. And these were not demos. I found out later on when I wised up a little bit. After a record had come out, and it had failed, the publisher did not want to present you with a store copy, because you would say to the publisher, this record's already been out. So therefore, that would not be the best way to do salesmanship when plugging a song. They would very professionally, but we didn't think of that. They would take the white plain label with their publishing company, such as Regent Music. A lot of people don't know this. Regent Music, 1619 Broadway, a nice full round label, of course that's redundant, and place it over the actual record. Now on the record of On a Back Street, I was hearing a girl singer. They had the white label on it which just said On a Back Street, publisher, Regent Music, and the name of the company. So when I heard that song in New York at Regent Music, Harold Walt had played that for me, I said, this is a smash. And had I been older and wiser, I would have said, this has been out before, Harold? Has it, what happened with it? But you don't ask, and I wasn't about to make waves. Turns out that all of the demos that you were hearing with full, lush production were records that had been out and had failed. So to us, it's a new item. Well, On a Back Street happened to be done by Dee Dee Warwick. You know the name Warwick? That's, Warwick, Dionne Warwick's cousin. So I'm hearing a great girl singer of a tremendous interracial relationship of a boy and a girl meeting on a back street. We love each other, but we're not supposed to be together, we two. And I said, this is it. But it had been a bomb earlier by Dee Dee Warwick, but we don't care. Jimmy Miller did Break My Heart Break, which is a killer song to this day. Anyone who hears the song gets tears in their eyes. On a Back Street was a killer song. Both of them were pick hits in Billboard, Variety, Recordland magazine, and Variety, Billboard, and Cashbox. And I was thrilled. At that time, I said to myself, we've got hot 3 songs, Bertie Coteau asked for a fee of $35 to do an arrangement. So 3 times 35, I can handle that. Now, at this point, Jimmy Miller, who was always very narcissistic, a very spoiled, egomaniac kind of person, he knew that he had talent. He said, "Gee, Walt, I think now I'd like to have a new car." I said, "Oh?" He says, "Yes, I can't keep going to my chemistry job at Sun Chemical in Rutherford and drive with an older car. Can I have a Ford Mustang, a 1965 Ford Mustang?" And I said, "Ooh," I said, "I'm paying for your clothes, your pictures, promotion. I'm paying for this record session of the new songs. Why do you have to have a 65 Mustang?" Now, I wasn't totally stupid. I said, "No, there has to be a limit here." And as I say, he said, "It'll look better for me to drive around since you're going to be booking me in the clubs of Newark and East Orange. I'd like to have a 65 Mustang." And I said, "Yipes, this is going to get a little bit involved right now." So I couldn't say no. We went over to the Irvington Ford. This is a very painful story because it's over with, but it was things, I would do it again. You know, there are things you do in life, you say, "I would never do that." No, I would do it again because that's what you had to do. You had to come up to bat and face the pitcher. So I laid out, actually I didn't lay out, I signed the contract with Irvington Ford, and the car was to be financed by the CIT Credit Corporation, which was a fledgling company at that time, on 110 Halstead Street in East Orange. I was now committed to $3,200, $66 a month, and I signed that contract. But I had said to Jimmy's father, "Mr. Miller, would you co-sign for this car and have Jimmy sign as a minor? And would you actually be the signer of record?" And he said, "No, Mr. Gollender, you're the boy's manager. You own him, you manage him. I'm not going to put my name on a contract. I'm just a house painter." So, good guy me, desperate for show business action, you know, being like a big spender, you know, I'll do anything to make it in show business. People who know me attest to that. I signed as the secondary name on the CIT contract. Jimmy Miller had his beautiful, state-of-the-art, first year out of the factory, Ford Mustang, red and black vinyl, the whole thing, the console on the floor. And I said, "All right, Jimmy, you'll make the $66 a month payments?" "Oh, yeah." "Oh, sure." I said, "Okay, good." Well, to add some pathos to this, he made 4 months of payments. Then when the record that had come out, the Break My Heart Break and Meeting on a Back Street, and I Love, Therefore I Am, got picks of the week. We could not get it beyond local radio play. Jimmy says, "I'm quitting show business. I'm going into the Vietnam War. Like my brother Bob is in the Army. We're going no place with the club bookings in Newark and Bloomfield and East Orange. I'm going into the service, Mr. Gollender." I said, but that's it. I'm going to enter the armed forces and get away from all this because my brother Bob is a sergeant." And I was then stuck. Well, he made 4 payments, and then he stopped making payments, and the car now was totally mine to finish paying for. $66 a month for a car I couldn't drive because I was driving a 62 Rambler, which had cost me $1,900. So what do you do with a beautiful Mustang car that you now are totally responsible for? That was the beginning of disaster. So I had the car and I'm stuck with it. What to do? What to do? So there it was. I was stuck with a 65 Mustang, and there's a story as to how I try to get the payments taken care of, but we're not going to go into that now. But now I've had my first dose of management. It's 1965, and I am still guidance counseling at East Orange High School, and I figure let me get really going now. I will rent the theatrical office from my friends who are going out of business at 23 Broad Street in Bloomfield. 23 Broad Street in Bloomfield. So I signed the lease with Mr. Levy, $150 a month for a year, and this becomes my playground. Coming out of East Orange High School, saying goodbye to the students there, I would drive into Bloomfield, park my car around the block by Bloomfield College, and put the key in the door at 4 o'clock and open up my office, and there was the free audition playground of Walt Gollender. I had 2 floors. I had the recording studio, then I had the upstairs for photographing artists and vocal groups. I was there 7 days a week, actually from 4 o'clock till closing, 11, 12 o'clock. I advertised in the Newark News at the time. Newark News, for those of you who don't remember or do remember. And I had everybody who had musical notes in their head coming in, vocal groups, single artists, every kind of artist as if they were appearing before American Idol, etc. And there was an open house playground. Nobody was charged. I never knew how to take money from anybody, and I just enjoyed it because I was having a ball finding new talent. The artists would come in, I would have vocal groups, I would have bands schlepping their drums and amplifiers up the stairs. I would be looking basically for a male or female or group sound which was, and I underscore this, as good as what was already successful in the industry, as good as. Anybody I ever got excited about had to be as good as another successful person. So here is the constant: Vic Damone, Al Martino, the Mills Brothers, the Four Aces, the Crew Cuts, Mario Lanza, Enrico Caruso. And if a singer came along who was close to that, this would be the benchmark. This is what we're looking for. Not just a person who sings Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Anybody can sing, but it's a distinctive sound that we look for. And I return to the fact that Jimmy Miller had that Johnny Mathis, Adam Wade, Lenny Welsh sound. And I have always looked for what is as good as what is making it. You cannot suffer anyone who is less than. Even when you have found an artist who's as good as, never better than, then you have the problems with the mothers and the fathers who don't want to sign the contracts, because now they think, my son, my daughter, my nephew is good. Gollender has accepted him. Now, oh, not so fast. We've been desperately trying to get into the business with my children. Now we want to look at the contract. And I only use a 2-page Passantino 778 contract, simple. And I would line out whatever they objected to. Power of attorney, you don't want that? Scratch it out. Length of time, I would modify that. But now you have the families bringing in their lawyers because now their child is in demand. And that would make you crazy, totally crazy. In Bloomfield, where I had my office at 23 Broad Street, I wasn't signing anyone because I was just too happy to. Well, I was seeing a lot of people. Don't forget, when you have a theatrical office, no holds barred, and it's open from 4 o'clock till 12, 1 o'clock at night, and people are coming up 7 days a week, and you're ordering pizzas from across the street and soda from the candy store. It's just a thrill to have all these people traipsing through there. I recorded many of them. Never charged a penny. Everything I did was out of my guidance money, which was about $6,500, as I say, and I was funding the recordings upstairs on equipment that I had bought at various audio shops. I had numerous microphones, a little reel-to-reel recorder. I recorded them at my expense. I had a partner at the time, Joe Marino, rest his soul, who loved to take pictures. He had been the official photographer for the Newark Fire Department, and he got a kick out of being in show business for the first time. Gave him a chance to get away from his wife. I won't mention any names. And he would come up every day, and he would bring pizza and soda and Italian sandwiches, and he'd say, "Who's here now?" I said, "Joe, go upstairs. I got a band up there, and I've got 2 go-go dancers coming in later on. Let's see who comes in. We're going to be here until 12, 1 o'clock tonight." And he would hang out with me. He was a dear, dear friend of mine, and we enjoyed talent 7 days a week. So I saw that I was spending an awful lot of money at $150 a month at the Golly Musical Enterprises on Broad Street, and I said, this is costing me a lot of money. I'm going to have to break the lease. And I said to Mr. Levy, I can't keep doing this. It's been a year and a half. I have to leave. And he said, oh, you still have an option. I'm going to hold you to the $150 a month. And I said, well, you can do what you want, but I'm leaving 23 Broad Street in Bloomfield. And he said, oh, I'll take you to court. And one of my financial mavens said to me, Gollender, just leave. As long as you send him something each month, the court cannot bother you. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Frank. He says, yeah, as long as you give the creditor or the landlord something, he can't bother you. I said, oh, okay, it's nice to know some gimmicks. So I paid him after I left and I moved to Union, which is quite a story. I paid the landlord maybe $100 to show good intention. The halo effect. You know the halo effect, you psychologists out there. And then I dropped it down to 50. And then I figured, 20, 20, 20, and then I stopped. So by this time, Mr. Levy had rented out 23 Broad Street to Bob Thomas, the photographer, who then came in and took over my recording studio and offices as Bob Thomas Photography. I was off the hook. So I now resume my talent auditions in the home in Union, New Jersey, where I have a full house, a living room, kitchen, dining room, which I had made into Sunday audition space, and also a basement. 1968, I began advertising in all the papers, especially the Ledger at that point, and I have groups coming from 11 o'clock in the morning until completion, 11 till 4. I have trucks pulling up with amplifiers and musicians and groups. They're coming into the living room to set up in my living room. There were no demos at that time, so they came with amplifiers and drums and mic stands, and it was unbelievable to have this stuff coming in the front door on the porch. Another group would come in the side door leading downstairs to the basement, and they would also set up, and I had Erwin Levine coming down privately with his friend Iris Sokoloff. And I have to tell you who Erwin Levine is. Erwin Levine was living in Irvington at the time, and he was a songwriter, mainly a lyricist, and he had had these hits with other writers. Our Love is Becoming a Thing of the Past for Pasake's Shirelles, Receptor Records. He had a nice record called Black Pearl, which he wrote with Phil Spector and Tony Wine. That was by Black Pearl by Sonny Charles and the Checkmates, if you will. And he had a very #1 wonderful gold record, which he co-wrote with Bobby Brassgold. Who wants to buy this diamond ring? You know the song, This Diamond Ring? And made a name for Gary Levitch, son of Jerry Levitch, as we know as Jerry Lewis from Irvington. And Erwin was coming down on Sundays now, 10 o'clock, 10:30. A little red car would pull up. Ira would be the driver. Erwin would come in smoking his cigarettes, and he'd say, good morning, Mr. Gollender. What's happening today? I said, I don't know yet. It's early. Sit down. And he would glean from the talent that was coming down and start offering contracts, much to my delight, sitting at the kitchen table, signing groups. People ask me about how I evaluate success. Well, everybody has their own schematic for defining success. For me, it was in education to be known, liked, loved, wanted, sought after, respected, and revered, in quotes. I'm not like the Pope, but I wanted to be popular and have people come to me and tell me good things, because I had a very, very abysmal childhood for many reasons. And this is how I lived my style of life. It was the mask, the facade, and I wanted to be important. I never made any money in show business at that time from day one up until the middle of the 1970s. But I felt that if the artist, the group, the trio, the quartet, got a recording contract through my efforts in New York City, shopping material, then if they had a hit record from that, and they became viable stage entertainers, and there was money coming in. Then I would exercise the 10% commission, which also had an escalation clause up to 15% as of the time. In other words, the contract would say where it had the percentage lines. I shall be entitled, as of the time I secure you a professional record contract, and you are successful, subjective word, I will be entitled to 10% of your gross income. Should you earn $1,000 a week, I would get 10%. And I would jockey back and forth with the parents and say, or the group, I said, now I'm going to escalate to 15% as of the time you make $2,000 a week. How's that, John? Oh, we got nothing now, Mr. Gollender. All right, fellas? Yeah, you go up to 15% as of 2000. What do we care? We've got 100% of nothing now. So I had the escalating clauses. I had that with all the people I worked with, folk singers, trios, rock bands. Anybody would get that same contract. None of them became successful. Besides Irwin having learned about my open house auditions where you could come into almost like a Costco and just look over all the acts at no cost to themselves. Larry Brown from Clark, New Jersey came down also and sat on the couch and wandered around my living room, my dining room, went downstairs in the basement to check out those groups. And Irwin and Larry were thrilled to see so much talent, but they pointed their finger to a Beatlesque group called the Becks from Metuchen, New Jersey. And this is what they wanted. Kevin McCabe, the lead singer, fronted a Beatles-type group, and the Beatles were big. It's 1968, and Irwin and Larry sitting in my kitchen eating jelly donuts, really, real stories from the inner city. This is a great group, Irwin. We've never collaborated before. We all have our own hits. Larry Brown had Come On Mary Ann for the Four Seasons, and he had Sock It To Me Baby from Mitch Ryder, and he was no slouch. But now Levine and Brown, gold record holders, come together under Gollender's tutelage, the midwife, and begin to write a song for this Beatlesque group called Oba Di Dum. And they said, this is it. This will be our Beatles group, Mr. Gollender. We have a good one here. I said, okay, I've got a contract for 10% if it ever does anything. We all went up to Vantone Studios, Northfield Avenue in West Orange, rehearsed, and I've got pictures from those sessions, thank God. And they recorded this Oba Di Dum and an original that Kevin and Bill Marquardt had written, and that was the master. That was the master, done at Vantone Studios, which is long gone. And Irwin is not one to walk around the streets of New York shopping music. He's too busy playing golf and betting on sports figures. Nothing wrong with that. And he'd let the lawyers do the shopping. You give it to your lawyers and they make phone calls. You know, they call the bigwigs and they say, hey, this is Joe Epstein. I want to bring over one of my clients' masters. We did place it. Yay! We did place the song with Dan Crew from Belleville, who is the brother of the famous Bob Crew, who needs no introduction. The master by the Becks was sold to Roulette Records for $2,400, none of which money I saw. It went back to Levine and Brown to cover studio expenses at Vantone, and they pocketed the rest. Hey, all I cared about is I've got a group now on Roulette Records. And I did have more groups later on that year on different labels, but right now it's the teaming. This is the thrill of my life, so to speak. Teaming two writers, already famous in their own way, but they now are working together. I had a lot of dead ends with groups that were signed and didn't go anywhere, but then, going back a short period of time, along come a group from Columbia High School called the Furnace Men. I got to meet them because I was putting up business cards on the Rondo Music Bulletin Board looking for talent. I met the Blades of Grass. They came to my house. Well, they weren't the Blades of Grass then. They were the Furnace Men from Columbia High School in beautiful New Jersey. And they sang and played acoustic guitars, and I said, wow, this is a combination of Critters and Association, and this is beautiful light harmony with the Beatles flavor. All right, so I complimented them. I signed them up. They were Beatle fans, and I ran around New York I looked for material. I went to every publisher. I found a song called Happy. And I said, this is perfect. Little did I know, as I said earlier, this had already been out by Billy Joel's group. And I didn't know that. They stuck that white label on. Blades of Grass, perfect harmony. Ooh, ah, you know, the tenor was there, the bass was there, beautiful harmony. And I said, let's learn this song. This could be the answer to the Critters and the Association and the Lovin' Spoonful. This is it, fellas. Did the demo recordings. I went right into New York when I wasn't teaching, and I shopped it around. And as luck would have it, the group was picked up by Bill and Steve Jerome, who are independent producers. They loved it that much, patted me on the back, brought in a full orchestra, and recorded The Master of Happy. The record was sold to Roulette Records, and I was thrilled. This is the early spring of 1967. These 4 boys from Columbia High School, who are all going to go off to college the next year, so I only have a year to work with them, sadly. Song comes out, and thanks to some, shall we say, the word payola never was a dirty word, it's just an unfortunate word. Thanks to some payola with New York disc jockeys, who I won't mention, the song burst upon New York radio. First at WMCA radio, and then it was picked up by some of the other stations, but we suddenly appeared on the Cashbox charts at number 65 in the summer of 1967, and I was thrilled. Happy, number 65, with a bullet. Now the same song from the publisher United Artists, who would love to get as many cover records as possible. The publisher in New York City sends the original demo that I had worked with. They send it out to California to Joe Pellegrino, and he records the same song with the Sunshine Company, and he puts it on the Liberty label. So here I am breaking this record here locally with disc jockeys and doing free shows and hops at different temples and community centers in Long Island with Van Morrison and the Tokens and Jay and the Techniques and the Fifth Dimension, all starting out at that time. And my record's big in New York on Jubilee. And what happens, the Sunshine Company covers it in California, and they come around the country with their promotion man, the Fifth Dimension, and they go into the radio stations and say, yeah, there's a record breaking in New York by the Blades of Grass called Happy. Listen to our record. We have a version now with the same chimes and bells. We have a speeded up version. Well, their record was played, and United Artists and Liberty Records in California had much more clout, if you know what I mean, financially, than little Jubilee in New York, which is a small independent. To make a long story pathetic, their record, the Sunshine Company and Happy, came right on the charts, passed us. We went from number 65 with a bullet. You know, the chart is 1 to 100. We had come on at 65. The next week we died at 64. So how do you come on at 65 and with a bullet, which means you're going up, and died the next week at 64? They had destroyed us, and the disc jockeys stopped playing ours, and the Sunshine Company came along with all the clout of Liberty. They had they had Ricky Nelson, they had the Johnny Rivers and all, and the Fats Domino. We were destroyed, but I quickly had signed the group to William Morris Agency. I knew I had to make hay while the sun was shining, And I offered the group to all the top agencies in New York, and William Morris, Al DiMarino, and Steve Lieber said, all right, we'll sign you. The record's sort of like, it's cooling off, but we'll get you some concerts very quickly. It's summer of 67. So they set up a concert at the Constitution Hall, where we opened up, Constitution Hall in Washington. We opened up for Neil Diamond and the Dave Clark Five. You can't beat that. And then the next night we went quickly to Alexandria, Virginia, and we opened up with some local groups. We were second billed to a group that was also pushing their first record. The record was called Light My Fire. Need I say more? There we were at the Alexandria, Virginia roller rink. My guys, high school graduates from Columbia High School, and a group with Jim Morrison, long hair, and Ray Manzarek and Roby Krieger and Dunsmore, dressing in the same locker room of the bowling alley. We're over here, and I'm getting my guys tuned up. And over there on those benches in the same dressing room, the Doors. And from there on, it was the summer was over. My boys were going off to college, Colgate, Villanova, Lehigh, CW Post. We had promised the parents we wouldn't bother them after that. They're college bound. It was a lark for them and a tremendous disappointment for me because they were gone after that. Sometimes I'm asked, what kept you going through all of these years of finding, discovering, promoting, and then seeing the projects die? What kept me going was the fact that I had the support of Irwin Levine and Larry Brown, who at that time now, through my pairing of them and teaming of them, they had now gone on to write Candida for Tony Orlando and Dawn. They wrote Knock 3 Times. Irwin and Larry, who started teaming in my home, they are now coming up with Knock 3 Times in 1971. Who's in the Strawberry Patch with Sally? Stepping Out, Gonna Boogie Tonight. Say, has anybody seen my sweet gypsy rose? And the end of 1973, they come up with the Song of the Decade. All this because I brought these two people together, and out comes the Song of the Decade, Billboard Song of the Decade, Song of the Year. I'm coming home, I've done my time, and I've got to know. You get it? Tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree, the only song where you're actually doing something. You're tying yellow ribbons around trees, the Super Bowl. It became a song, an anthem, if you will, for anyone coming home. It was intended, whether Larry wants to admit it or not, and we've had some verbal bouts with him. It was truly about a prisoner coming home from jail, and I've said this on other occasions, but it expanded, and Larry has, shall we say, fudged this. It was a prisoner. I'm coming home, I've done my time. It was a guy coming off the bus from prison. They expanded it to children who were lost in wells, miners who were trapped underneath the ground, and then to veteran soldiers coming home. Anything to exploit the song. But if you listen to the lyrics, as I've written to the Library of Congress and I've explained, this was about a prisoner, a man coming home from being incarcerated. You know, I've done my time. Listen to the lyrics, my friends. I've done my time. I've come home. Are you still mine? Soldiers are coming home injured and crippled. It's, sorry, Larry, if you're looking in, it's about a prisoner, and they expanded it to veterans and anyone coming home. So I now had something to hang my shingle on, if you will. I had the Blades of Grass, and I exploited that fact very heavily. I was known for the Blades of Grass, and now having paired two successful writers who had been in their own right gold record writers, now they're working together as a team, Levine and Brown, don't ever forget that name. And now people are coming to me more and more, and they're coming with like, oh, hi, Mr. Gollender, we'd like to audition for you on Sunday. Whereas before, if we go back to Bloomfield, it was like, hi, Mr. Gollender, we're from Bloomfield High School, Glen Ridge High School. We're a singing group. Can we sing for you? Yeah, all right. But now it's 1969. We have Candida, Knock 3 Times, all the hits of Tony Orlando. And it was known factually. It was empirically correct. I've got all the pictures. Irwin even talks about me on a television show. When he's asked, how did you and Larry get together? He says, a talent scout, Walter Gollender, with 2 L's in New Jersey, put us together. I mean, it's history. We all know it. There are detractors who are jealous, but I did it. It's documented. So now, when I have Levine and Brown credentials, and Irwin says, Mr. Gollender, it seems like 95% of the acts that I sign, I find from you. You've got quite a talent for picking talent. And I said, Herb Kessler, where are you now? The dream has come true that I'm finding talent for Irwin and Larry, and they're both producing groups of mine. But here's a sad point. Nothing that I ever found for Levine and Brown, going back to the Becks on that Beatle thing, or the group from Metuchen, nothing I ever did with Levine and Brown that they produced ever charted. They, as a writing team, they, as writers for other artists, had gold records galore, which I'm not going to go into. Look on the computer for the hits of Levine and Brown, Irwin Levine, Ella Russell Brown. Nothing they ever did. This is a killer now. This becomes like Mental Breakdown 105. Nothing they did with my groups that I had on the contract ever had any luck. I mean, I have to take a breath on that. Nothing from my groups ever had any success, but they were gold record writers for a lot of people, from the Drifters, Tiny Tim, the Tony Orlando. Couldn't get a break with the groups that I found, but on their own, when they weren't playing golf or going to the track or playing poker, they were writing for the superstars. My groups were just signed, demoed, mastered, shopped, dead. That was a killer. And that went on from 1968 until Levine and Brown broke up over financial disagreements, and they were sued by, well, they had to sue Tony Orlando because Tony Orlando was using a theater in Branson, Missouri, which he called the Yellow Ribbon Theater, and Levine and Brown's lawyers said to Orlando, no, you can't use that Yellow Ribbon. You have to cease and desist, and the war started there. My basic mistake, as I think back, is I was always a weak negotiator because I came out of a childhood that was very, very traumatic and dysfunctional, if I can say that, and it was. So I was never able to assert myself with musicians or powerful people or VIPs because I always came in from a position of hat in hand. I was smart, I was clever, I was comedic, I was intellectually gifted, but it didn't translate to hardcore or even softcore business. I would come in and say, I've been able to do this, and what do you think? Oh, Gollender, that's terrific, boy. You've got a great ear, and you've got a great persistence, and you can really find talent, as Irwin Levine said. 95% of his acts were my discoveries. 95, that's getting up there, even 98%. But I was always afraid of asserting myself, still am. So unless you're a very strong person who can kick, you know what, you're going to be hurt because people equate, oh, this is a truism, kindness with weakness. They don't, you cannot be Don King and go around giving out candy bars. You can't be Donald Trump. You can't be the owners of casinos by going around, helping, You've got to have tremendous strength and don't care who you step on. Now, I couldn't do that because I was afraid of the big R word. Underscore this one, rejection. Rejection, 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 like in real estate, location, location, location. This is the big word, rejection. I pussyfooted around hoping that people would like me and respect me and love me for my talents, and no, they would take advantage, use me, and toss me aside. And I'm sorry to say, many times they would say, oh, Walt Gollender, who's he? These are not exaggerations. Or, yeah, so-and-so and so-and-so are a big success right now, and so-and-so and so-and-so are really doing well. And they never said who put that deal together. It was myself, yo mismo, as we say in Spanish. And I never got credit unless I told an interviewer what I've done, and it got printed on the paper. But people don't come running out of the crowds and say, Gollender, it's you. Well, maybe in a nightclub, a group will recognize me and say, hey, everybody, we have a great talent scout, Walter Gollender. He's famous for this and that. It's a momentary thing. It doesn't translate into a big splash. My dream would be, as a neurotic, desperate promoter, to be on the front of the Star Ledger or in a story with a picture inside, rather than seeing the murderers and the car accidents, which get half a page, or women who drown their babies. I'd like to get a little exposure, more than I've had, and it doesn't come, so I gave it up after a while. I suffered a lot of personal pain. I still am in the throes of problems, and I'm very honest about that. And I had enough of it, and it wasn't meant to be. I had my thrills between Dick Clark, Four Aces, Levine and Brown, Max Weinberg, but it's over. It doesn't carry over. It doesn't give you a Doppler effect. I walk the streets today, and nobody knows who I am, and I tell my psychology support people, I'm just a face in the crowd. And they say, well, what do you expect? I said, but I wanted to be known as the guy who did all these things, who was minimized. And that really bugs me a lot. It's very painful that I'm not the headline news for some of these. Levine and Brown, Max Weinberg told the audience that I was the one who first did his demos when he was in Columbia High School. The Max Weinberg, playing for Conan O'Brien tonight. He recognized me, saluted me in the crowd, told the audience in New Brunswick that this is the man, Mr. Gollender, who, when I was in high school, was the man you took your demos to. And I got a big round of applause, and I was thrilled. And he said Gollender ran shows at the Royal Theater in Bloomfield, which I did. And he got on those shows and played. His mother was in the audience. And he said Gollender gave us the incentive and the motivation to go on with the business. And then he ends with a joke, because you have to get off that serious vein. He says, Mr. Gollender, see the respect I afford him? Mr. Gollender, the first demo recording I ever made was in his garage in Union, New Jersey. Pause. And I'm going to get that $15 back to you real soon. Gales of laughter. I was like, oh, pumped up like you wouldn't believe. And I left there. I got in my car. I came home. I was just nobody again. I can't be satisfied, say my therapist. I cannot be satisfied. I cannot be fulfilled because the inner core, the child, never was there to start with. It's all a facade and a mechanical performance. Empty within, tra-la-la on the outside. Laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. From the song of the same name. It's no longer a talent business, and I've never been lucky in saying to an artist, very gently and tactfully, Herman, your song is nice, but it's not competitive with what's out there. Well, what do you know? I'll prove it to you. I said, I've learned that a person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So once I get a no or an objection, I say, come on, you know your psychology. Drop it. Don't escalate this. I say, Herman, continue on with your song and your demo. And when it hits the charts, you'll, oh, you bet I will. I'll show you. What do you know? I said, what'd you come down here for, to my office? Well, because I saw it in the paper. My mother said, come down, but you don't know anything about this. I'll prove to you. I said, in other words, you want to hear only what you want to hear? Oh, no, I have to go now. Goodbye, drop dead. And you multiply that for years and years from people who think that they're going to be invincible. They're going to be the exceptions. They've never come back to me after they've left me since 1963. Whoever made it never came back and said, look at me. I tell people Max Weinberg made it, but I never turned him down. I just said, nice group, nice bunch of boys from Columbia High School. Here's your demo, pay me the $15, and good luck. Of course, he changed personnel many times. You know, he replaced Vinnie Mad Dog Lopez with Springsteen, but Max is up there. Top of the world, but I never said anything bad about him. He was only a 17-year-old drummer. So no one has ever come back to me and said, I made it. Dreams are dreams, but don't talk about, as Erwin Levine said, do not tell me what will be, show me what is. Has the check cleared? Not, is the check in the mail? Did you get the check? No, it's got to be cleared because they can always stop payment or it can be a bad check. So when you hear the cliche, and this roils me up, it roils me up. The check is in the mail, big deal. I have to deposit that darn check. Will it clear? Will it clear? Forget about in the mail. Do you have the money in your account? Bottom line. Question comes up if I had a choice between being involved with a great song or making money. I would say I need enough money to be comfortable. I don't spend extravagantly. I don't have a fancy house, fancy car. I had a Mustang, but that went to a singer. I would want enough money to be able to not scrimp. I'd like to be comfortable, be able to pay my insurance bills, but I still would long for the successful show business venture because that's all I care about. From that 1945 play where I was an elephant and then I became an entertainer at Montclair State College singing early Elvis songs. I want fame, not fortune, fame, glory, respect, love, adoration, and the phone to ring. I don't want to call you, you call me, because I'm tired of begging people. Success in show business, on my tombstone, which I've already prepared, I got a discount. I've already had it carved. Here lies Walt Gollender. He tried, continued on the other side of the tombstone. I just thought of that. It's pretty cute, right? Out of the mouths of nitwits come gems. I like that. On the other side of the tombstone. My God. I'm going to use that again.